Hello, my fellow presenters. Okay, so you move to London and you have some kind of creative or freelancer interests. Maybe you are an aspiring actor, maybe a theatre director, or somebody that's a photographer, or does something completely different and just wants a completely new experience, outlook, something to complement their career. Whatever your situation is, one of the good things that you could do, or that might be right for your situation, is to join an extras agencies. You could, or a few. There are a number of agencies that you could join, and I've certainly been a member or on the books for a number of them for a long time. And so, what I thought I would do is go through quite a few different agencies that I've been with, the sorts of jobs that I would get, what the culture was like. It should be noted that nothing that I'm going to say here is going to be slanderous to any company in any way. Obviously, I had my preferences of which companies I felt better to liaise with. It should also be noted that a number of the companies here have probably updated the way that they work. So what my experience was at the time, because this is quite a few years back, is probably not going to be the same for you. They might have updated the way that they do things and the types of jobs and contracts that they get. Anyhow, this might be useful, and if there's anybody that does extras or supporting artist work, as it's often known, walk-on work, feel free to comment here on what the insight that I've given, and elaborate on it further. Tell us about new agencies, new companies, and things like that. That covers basically the bulk of it, and here we go. So the first main one that I would say, and the first one that I ever signed up to, and the one that I think is probably the biggest, is the Casting Collective. They have tens of thousands, I think, or at least thousands and thousands on their books. They have productions all over, but primarily in London and the home counties, and with all of the major studios. And I would probably say that they book most of the major Hollywood films. Excuse me. So if you're somebody that would like to have a go in a big Hollywood blockbuster and see what it's like, and just see different amazing sets and things like that, do that. And even if there's a big production that uses multiple agencies, Casting Collective will be one of them. I've always had a great rapport with this company, and yeah, I definitely think if you want to throw yourself in, go for it. They're really easy to sign up to. It used to be the case when I started that you had to go in and have your photo taken, and then you'd have a few photos taken, and then that would be used on their kind of printed book. But now finally they've moved with the times, and it's very much the case that you just kind of submit your own photos and you update your stats, and there's definitely an emphasis on you keeping your measurements up to date. What's also great about them to some extent is the fact that, if you get a booking, it's fine to tell them beforehand, and then, they will take you off if they've not been able to confirm you, because often a major production will just throw loads of dates at you. And as a freelancer, you've got to take the first that comes along. It's not always worth banking on it, on trying to get, a number of dates on something, because they might not actually be wanting to have that many people that they asked to put on hold. You don't actually know whether that's the case. That's the thing. Or they might just change things entirely. So much is often up in the air, and it's best not to put yourself through that. I learned that kind of the hard way, really early on. Not that I had lots of clashes really early, because I didn't really sign up to that many initially, but I remember thinking, oh, so many of these dates have fallen through. But then I realised it's probably the case that, they don't they don't ask the amount that they're actually going to call in to hold those dates by. They just kind of want to cover themselves, the ADs and things like that. There is a lot of penciling, and you might not hear till last minute, and that's not down to the agency. They tell you the first chance they get. But yeah. Just another note about Casting Collective, they do also get productions outside of the big films. I would just say that probably when you look over a lot of the chits, we call chits are what you would get at the end, although now that's all computerized and those are emailed to you. Those are your kind of like remittance pay slips. But anyway, when you look over the jobs that you've done, you will find that if you take up the films that get offered your way, you're likely to have that take up the bulk of your days, particularly because those are the kind of ones where they're going to need big crowds in, and particularly if you get fitted as a kind of character, they'll use you for multiple dates, particularly if you're of the demographic in a film that can be like a soldier or a footman, that you'll be in the background of a lot of scenes for a lot of films. That's kind of really how you rack up a lot of dates. But anyhow, they do get other productions, like they'll get the odd commercials, they'll have somebody that deals with commercials, TV, things like that, because a lot of the productions will spread who they use. Another one is 2020 casting. They are ones that I also had a really good rapport with. They wouldn't get as many as the Casting Collective, and their books were a bit smaller, but when they did get one, it would mean that, you know, you would be used a lot. I remember one summer I had an internship with IBM, but that summer coincided with when they got Hugo Cabaret contract on the Martin Scorsese film, and a lot of their extras were just working all the time, and you know, they'd easily clear £1,000 over the week, and it was a really good gig, and a lot of them would talk about that. Okay, another is Ray Knight. Ray Knight are great in the sense that, again, I had a really good rapport with them when I was with them. And what's great about them is if you do manage to get on their books, which is actually really hard for a lot of people. Some people are successful straight away. It does take people a while. If you do manage to get with Ray Knight, then one of the great things is that often, in my experience, and this might have changed, is they would just call you up and say, are you free on such and such date, or maybe such and such and another date for X TV show, and they'd say, great, book it in. So none of this penciling business. They have more autonomy over who they can put in, which is great, because that way you've got a more secure booking in the diary. I mean, it could change. They might say, oh, it's been moved or it's been cancelled. I've actually had a cancellation fee sometimes when I was doing a lot of this work, but on the whole, it just makes things a lot easier. You know, you've got some dates in the diary. Sometimes even it might be like, oh, here you've not been on EastEnders in a while, have a day on EastEnders. Holby City, that's no longer on air anymore. But yeah, things like that. So that's great. And like with this kind of work, you'll be going to different parts of London or in the greater home counties. So yeah, that's something I'd say about them. And something to bear in mind, sometimes when you sign up to quite a lot of agencies, a lot of productions, bear in mind, are splitting who they're using. So they're not always giving the contract to one company. Often they do, often like say Casting Collective will get the whole film. But sometimes if that's the case, it's because they also want to see different new faces. And often you really can't, some people get away with it, but you shouldn't. You can't really say yes to one production and another. So that's some. Another agency I would say is Rachel's People. Again, really lovely. A booking culture as well, where they would call you up. The reason that's the case, just to give you the kind of background here, is the lady that heads up the company, Rachel from Rachel's People. She used to work for Ray Knight, and then she separated from them and made up her own company. And she's also been very successful with her company as Ray Knight are, and both are doing well. So yes, and I think it's another employee did go with her as well. So they're doing really well. And again, it's a similar thing where you're just booked up. With both Ray Knight and Rachel's People, make sure if you do have a booking, don't cancel it unless there's a really special reason, because they won't like that, and that's a thing that kind of can be held against you. But obviously, like with freelancers, these things happen. So, and I hope this is something that we're going to talk about in future videos, or I'm going to talk about. You've got to think about what's right for you, or what your next steps are, not feeling trapped, things like that. And another is Extras People, who I'm going to join this up with Piece of Cake Casting and another. Now, I might be slightly wrong on this, but I wasn't with them. But something to bear in mind is they all seem to use a similar platform. They opened a bit later as I was kind of leaving the extras game and trying to move on. So they'll use a similar platform. I think some of them might even charge a higher commission. The ones I've said thus far would often charge you 15% commission plus a book fee, and you feel that book fee because sometimes you might feel like you're doing a day of work for free, which essentially you are. But then often, and I can talk about this in future videos, sometimes you'll get extras like broken lunch, things like that. Continuous working day, which is great because you go into overtime after only 7 hours. If you do a 12-hour day, you've got overtime for like 5 hours or more. But yeah, things like that. These platforms you sometimes will charge like 20%. I don't know if this applies to all the agencies, but I'm just putting them as names of other agencies out there that you can look into, and feel free to do your own research, talk to other people. That's, I think, one of the best ways to find out what their experience is, what it's like, things like that. Guys and Dolls, they would have EastEnders. They did also have Holby City, so when I was with them, I would get a lovely batch of days, sometimes just as a patient. There's often a lot of downtime on those, and it meant that I could get on with other things, other reading, for other projects and other things that I was doing. That show's no longer on. They would also get a lot of commercials. And I think that's most of the agencies. No, the other one is Universal Extras. How could I forget about Universal Extras? So again, they were one which I signed up to. I didn't hear from them for ages. And then out of the blue, I had a message from them. Are you free for 24? Because this is when 24 was shooting over here. This was like the mini series 24 Live Another Day. This was like Kiefer Sutherland's last batch, where I think he did it as kind of like 12 episodes as opposed to 24 episodes, and it was shot in London. And I got a call to be a regular in the CIA office, CTU unit rather, and I had a lovely time because it was like my last kind of main gig, and the fellow regulars there, we all kind of became like quite tight-knit and had a really good time, and some of us kept in touch, so that was really special. And it was great kind of seeing the set, and plus I'm a huge fan of 24, and I just think it's gripping, thrilling, and it's one of my favourite TV shows, and it was just amazing just sort of being able to see just sort of how quick fire they were, and just watching a lot of the action. It was brilliant. So I did that for them. So they do also get big films, big productions. They also get quite niche stuff, because then after a while they weren't really getting me regular stuff like your Casting Collectors, Ray Knights, so forth. But then I had a message from them out of the blue, and then I got quite a good gig where I was kind of like I say body double, but they did actually use me. I was like in a suit for like some kind of commercial shoot, which was well paid. And then I didn't hear from them in a while, but also I wasn't actively pursuing it. I was moving on to other things. So it's one of the ones where it's good to kind of just sign up, have your details on there, and then something might come up out of the blue, and you can just sort of, if you're free, you haven't, the diary permits, you can just sort of go for it and have that experience and move on to your next project. So it's always good to kind of plant the seeds. So I hope that gives you the overview of different agencies you can sign up to when you come to London. There might be some major new ones that I've missed now, but hopefully that gives you an idea. It does take time, but sometimes there's specific windows when they open their books. Sometimes it might be a certain production. I remember, I think my first one with Casting Collective was Prince of Persia, and I think it was like 16. Because for Prince of Persia, actually, interestingly, and I don't say this to kind of, say anything against the actors, but at the time that was Jake Gyllenhaal and Gemma Arterton, and what they did was they put a tan on them, to make them look Persian, but they were really happy to have extras of more authentic ethnic heritage, if you like. So they would do that, but I don't think they would get away with that now, which you would hope. And that's nothing against the actors. It was because obviously they're just taking on work, but you would think that now things like that would be cast in a much more sort of thoughtful way. But yeah, that's a digression again. But hopefully that gives you an idea of different productions and where a window might be opening and you might just fit the mold and be able to get in. Perhaps in another video I'll talk about how you could present yourself in a good light to get in with an agency where you're more just sort of booked. And yeah, I hope you found this helpful, and thanks very much, and see you in the next video.